All right, so the first step in converting your bass guitar to a fretless is to remove the nut. Of course, after you already removed the neck from the body, if it is a bolt-on. If there's no fingerboard wood in back of the nut, you can do something like this. Tap it with a hammer, very lightly, and it should pop right off. Okay, so the nut has been removed. Now I'm going to show you how you can start taking the frets out. Now this bass guitar has really worn frets because I've been using it probably every day to every few days for 10 years or so. And I use stainless steel strings. So I want to give this a new life. All right, we have the 24th fret here. And I'm going to show you the process I use to convert a fretted bass into a fretless. So you want to take a brand new razor blade. Now I like to wipe it down with a microfiber towel first because it does have a layer of oil on it to prevent it from rusting. Remove that so you don't slip. Well, I always start here in the 24th fret on the low side because no one ever plays the second octave of B on a 6-string bass. So if you have any issues here, it shouldn't be too big of a deal. Okay, so you get right underneath it and you lift up just a little bit. Be very careful. You need to use eye protection for this because if this razor blade snaps and flies into your eye, you're going to be really unhappy. So please don't do that. Use some safety glasses. Now I take this guy right here, work underneath, and start lifting up. You see, I'm getting a bit of tear out because I've used this bass for 10 years with the same frets. So these are really, really in there. Okay, I'm underneath the tang. Now you really gently rock between side to side. And once you get underneath it enough, you just lift up, straight up, and then keep pushing forward. Straight up, push forward. Straight up, push forward. And you want to be very patient with this because the older the frets are, the more difficult this is going to be. Because these things are meant to stay in for the life of the instrument. So you got to be very careful and very slow. And then keep sliding it forward. And it popped out. You don't really want that to happen because it could cause some damage. But the fret is out. At this point, if you have any pieces that seem to be coming loose, sometimes it's just going to happen. If this is a really, really important instrument, you probably want to use some kind of guard around the fret so that you'll keep all of those fragments down. Now, if you see a large piece start to lift up, then you can use a dab of super glue and push it back down. So this fret slot is actually narrower than what I am used to, but that's okay. So let's check our veneer and see if it will even fit. So I use this right here for a veneer. It's a 1/64 of an inch, and it worked for me for most of my conversions. So let's see if it'll actually work for this. I'm gonna cut a fresh slice off. So it looks like it does actually fit, but it's super tight. That could be just residue inside the fret slot. So let's work on cleaning that up. Now I use this right here. It's actually a razor saw. You can get it in most hobby stores along with the wood veneer. So this fits perfectly in the channel. And you just want to go lightly back and forth at first, applying even pressure. You'll feel it start to glide once you start to clear the path for it. Okay, so it's feeling pretty good. Now, I got most of the gunk out, but let's take that piece we cut out of the veneer that we used to size the slot, and we'll use that, start from one end and push to the other, and you'll notice a bunch of junk falls out. So you want to do that. You want to do that until it can slide pretty freely all the way from one side to another. Now I'm feeling a snag right here. That means I haven't cleared it properly. I like to angle it up sometimes if I have a certain area I want to focus on. And at a certain point it will start to stick a bit, but that's totally normal. Now go back to your razor blade. It seems like all of these things fit pretty well into fret slots, so it's pretty fortuitous. So start from one side, and I'm binding up. So I actually flip it over like this. It's a really fine cutting side. And you'd be very careful, but work your way like this, and once in a while pull up, and you notice some dust will come out. Yeah, there's like a bevel on here, so it's a bit thicker on the stock part than it is on the edge. And the deeper you cut that groove, the more it will bind. So go back to this tool. Yep, you see that dust coming out? That was the dust I cleared up with that razor blade. There you go. All right, so it's pretty good now. Try the veneer again. And the veneer slides very nicely all the way from one side to another. And that's great. That's exactly what you want. Let's remove a couple more frets just to exemplify the process that I use. Okay. So take the razor blade and approach it at this sort of angle. It shouldn't be difficult to get underneath it. So I'm just barely underneath the edge. Lift up very slightly and then turn it around 180 degrees and do the same deal. So it's starting to lift up. This one's pretty tough. Okay. See, I got the razor blade underneath, so that's a really good sign. Now I'm really close to getting that tang out. I'm gonna use the razor blade because it's thinner to actually get underneath. I'm gonna actually use both. Razor blade on bottom And this guy here. Okay, the razor blade is in. So just work it just a little bit so you can get underneath it with this tool. Now remove the razor blade. Now I can get underneath it. Now it's going to be scary because there's going to be some glue and residue and all that stuff. Now, if you're really worried, what is a very good idea, depending on how they installed the frets, sometimes they actually put CA, super glue, or wood glue under the fret to keep it from moving. So when they pound it in, or press it in, they will stay and they won't come up. So what you can use is a soldering iron and use a chisel tip because you have more thermal mass. Don't contact the wood because you will burn it. So start from one side. You should see and hear some sizzling, and then slowly work your way to the other side, and then back again. And once you stop hearing that sizzling, then you are ready to actually pull the fret. In my experience, that is rarely needed, but it does help. I don't want to have to go get my soldering station right now. But if you're working on a super delicate instrument you cannot afford to have any damage to, my first recommendation is you need experience before you're able to do this without damaging substantially. So bring it to a professional so their work will be covered. You know, if they screw up your bass and it's a vintage $3,000 bass, that's going to be for them to deal with. Of course, hopefully they're going to be honest with you. If they tell you there may be some damage involved, you have to understand that's possible because it's nearly impossible to do this without any tear out. The newer the instrument is, the easier this is. Okay. So you'll see very small pieces come out, one right there. There's one starting to lift up a tiny bit, pardon me, right here. There's some pieces starting to lift up here. But in the scheme of things, it's not that bad.